You probably think democracy and philosophy grew up together in ancient Greece, best friends, two great ideas from the same golden age. They did not. One of history's greatest philosophers looked directly at democracy and concluded it was one of the most dangerous ways a society could govern itself, and then democracy killed him for saying so. Here is the question Socrates actually asked, and it is more uncomfortable than you expect. If you were heading out on a long sea voyage, who would you want steering the ship? Someone the entire crew voted for regardless of experience, or someone who had actually studied the stars, the currents, and the weather? Socrates believed Athens was exactly this ship, sailing with a captain chosen by popularity instead of skill. In Plato's Republic, he describes a vessel where the crew argues constantly about who deserves to steer, where anyone can grab the wheel with enough charisma, and where the person who actually understands navigation gets dismissed as a useless dreamer. Nobody on this ship requires any expertise to vote on its direction. They simply believe loudly and confidently that they are qualified. Socrates did not think this was a flattering metaphor. He thought it was a precise description of Athenian democracy. His objection was not that ordinary people were stupid. It was something more specific. He believed that running a city well required real expertise, the same way that flying a plane or performing surgery requires expertise. You would never let a random citizen vote on how to perform your operation. Yet Athens let any citizen, regardless of education or experience, vote directly on war, on law, on matters of life and death for the entire city, simply because they happened to be born free men of Athens. This is the part that should genuinely surprise you. Socrates was not arguing for a narrow ruling class of wealthy elites. He was arguing for something almost the opposite, that political power should belong to whoever had actually done the work of thinking carefully and rationally about justice, regardless of birth or wealth. In his ideal system, expertise mattered more than status. Athens, by contrast, handed equal political power to every free citizen, whether they had spent years studying ethics or had never thought seriously about the city's problems even once. Socrates also watched democracy in action, up close, and did not like what he saw. He once held a government post himself, selected essentially by lottery, and witnessed an episode where an angry assembly of citizens illegally condemned a group of generals to death in a fit of public rage. No careful deliberation, no expert testimony given proper weight, just an emotional crowd making a permanent, fatal decision in the heat of the moment. To Socrates, this was democracy doing exactly what he feared it would do, mistaking the loudest argument for the wisest one. Then in 399 BC, the system Socrates had criticized for decades turned its full force directly onto him. He was put on trial, accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and disrespecting the city's gods. A jury of 500 ordinary Athenian citizens chosen democratically heard the case. They were not legal experts, they were not philosophers. They were exactly the kind of unspecialized decision-makers Socrates had spent his life arguing should not hold this much power. The jury convicted him. By a narrow margin, that same jury sentenced him to death. Socrates drank the poison that killed him because a democratic vote decided his questions had become too dangerous to tolerate. The very government structure he had spent decades warning about did not just prove his theoretical point, it executed him as evidence. This is the strange, uncomfortable inheritance sitting underneath nearly every modern democracy. The civilization that gave the world philosophy also gave the world a profound, documented warning about the limits of majority rule, written by the very philosopher that democracy chose to kill. You probably think democracy and philosophy grew up together in ancient Greece, best friends from the same golden age. They did not. One of them put the other one to death by a vote.